I travel for work and my employer allows me to spend up to $100 day on food. If I don't use it, I don't get to pocket the money. When traveling, I make sure to use the full $100 every day, so I'm eating very well. My wife is upset with me because I get to eat out for every meal at least 2 weeks a month. She says it isn't fair and I should just go to the grocery store and bring back food to my hotel. I've explained to her that it doesn't make sense since I don't get to keep the money if I don't use it. Every evening when I call her, she wants to know exactly what I ate. She can see the credit card statements reimbursed by employer, so she knows how much I spent. She'll see I spent $75 on dinner and start freaking out about how wasteful I am. I take her out for dinner at least 2 times a week when I'm in town, and she goes out several times a week with friends when I'm not in town. This whole thing just seems irrational, and it is really putting a strain on our relationship. I haven't gained any weight and am in great shape. I focus on quality of food much more than quantity. Most hotels have a small gym and / or a pool. I can't buy groceries or gift cards to bring home. It is against policy. I submit pictures of the receipts, so this wouldn't work. I track all my expenses and submit receipts for reimbursement weekly. I float the money for 7 days max. Usually I have around $3,000 to $4,000 in expenses per week, which we can make work without any issues since I pay for all my food, airfare, hotels, and car rentals myself. I collect an enormous amount of points and other perks. These points allow me to go on at least 2 vacations a year with my wife for next to nothing. We went to Spain early this year for 2 weeks and spent under $400 for the entire trip. Not using a company card is one of the best perks. Using a different credit card is not on the table. My wife and I have all our finances together. We both think it's important to be 100% transparent with money. We don't have any kids. She started a business selling Mary Kay a few years ago. She is working really hard to expand and find new customers. She likes the idea of being her own boss, and I try to do everything I can to support her. I'm rarely gone for 2 weeks at a time. Sometimes I'm gone for only 2 days. On average, a trip lasts 5 days and I go on 3 a month. A lot are saying Mary Kay is a pyramid scheme. I don't really know that much about the details of the business. I see a lot of women selling makeup, candles, and diet-related products, so I thought this was normal. We've put in around $50,000 over the past 2 years. Most of the money goes towards buying inventory and training seminars. I'll have to do some research to see what is going on. My day-to-day is anything but glamorous. I've spent more time in the airport than I even care to think about. Things go wrong often on the logistical side. My work can be very stressful, but I've gotten very good at managing the workload. My boss encourages us to use the full expense amount. He understands the stress involved traveling so much. He's actually working on increasing the amount to $140 day because of inflation. My boyfriend's mom makes these amazing cookie bars. She makes them for the holidays and family gatherings, and people always request that she brings them. I asked for the recipe once and she laughed and said no, that it was hers and she doesn't give it out to anyone. I dropped it and never asked again. I started baking a lot during the pandemic. It's been fun for me in my downtime. I decided with my free time to try to recreate the cookie bars my boyfriend's mom makes. I pulled up recipes that sounded similar from online blogs and started baking and tweaking. It took about 5 recipes and batches, but I finally nailed it down. Her secret recipe ended up essentially being a cookie bar known as a Carmelita. I then decided to make it my own and improve it to my tastes. I used higher quality chocolate, made sauce with local homemade caramels, used flaky sea salt on top, vanilla bean paste instead of extract, added a pinch of this fantastic organic cinnamon I had on hand. The results were over-the-top delicious. My boyfriend declared they are better than his mom's, and he finished off half a pan in 2 days. He was FaceTiming with his mom Saturday and eating one. She asked what it was and he said, "One of your caramel bars." Joe found a recipe online but made it even better. She lost it. She started yelling about how awful I was for making her cookies and how I had no right. He told her that she was overreacting and quickly ended the call. She started blowing up my phone with nasty texts about what an asshole I am. I explained to her that I found the recipe I used online where it was very public. I had actually tweaked that to make it more my own. And that I wasn't ever planning on bringing them to an event she's at, so I did not see what the big deal was. She didn't care. She called me names and told me I was wrong for baking a recipe that I knew was similar to hers. She isn't speaking to me or her son. While I don't think my boyfriend should have made the comment about how I made it even better to his mom. Taking that out of the equation, she thinks I'm an asshole for even making them to begin with. I disagree, but from the texts from her and a couple other family members of hers, they think I crossed a line. A couple years ago, a close friend, Ashley, started a long-distance relationship with a guy, Chris. He has been really good to her, and after meeting in person a few times, they decided to move in together. I was super happy for her as she had a few bad relationships over the years, and it was nice to see her in a healthy one. That joy faded the last couple months before she moved a few states over to be with him. The issue isn't her moving, but that she repeatedly joked about having a baby from Chris. At first, I accepted it as jokes, but over time I realized Ashley was serious. For context, Ashley has 2 children from a previous relationship, ages 10 and 12. Chris absolutely doesn't want kids. He told her this at the start, and anytime she hinted possibly wanting more, he shot it down, saying it was a deal breaker. Now, Chris is more than willing to accept her children as her own, because he loves her, and after meeting her kids, them as well. He's accepted that they are a package deal with her, and since they are at an age where they are semi-independent, it's not an issue for him. To me, Chris is a real bro, for taking on her kids without issue. Hearing Ashley say she wants a baby out of him, one way or another, bothered me to no end. It's hard enough to find a partner that treats you well and accepts children that aren't their own. To find one that does and then talk about plotting to force a baby seems gross and manipulative. Before her move, I had sat down with Ashley, trying to talk sense into her. At first she resisted, but finally it seemed she understood how shitty it would be. After I felt like she had understood, I put the issue behind me and helped support her through the hassle of moving. A few days after she left, I got a call from a mutual friend who delves into the Wiccan / metaphysical realm. She was distraught and confessed to me that shortly before Ashley's move, Ashley had come to her asking for a fertility spell. This friend didn't feel comfortable about it and refused. When pushed, she said she cast a spell for a healthy and honest relationship, but told Ashley it was for fertility. As you can imagine, I was livid. I messaged Ashley, confronting her about what I learned, and she laughed it off as she was desperate, but magic is fake anyway. So what's the harm? She then let it slip, that since Chris was planning on getting a vasectomy in a few months, she had poked holes in their condoms as a last-ditch effort. At that point, I couldn't stay silent. I gathered up screenshots of all the conversations over the last few months and sent them to Chris. He understandably freaked out and kicked her out. Now, Ashley hates me because she was kicked out after a huge move and didn't have a job or money to make it back. She said I'm a terrible person for putting her and her kids out on the street. My dad died and I'm scared my family won't get along. So yesterday after my dad comes home he eats what my mom made for him. Eggs and Spam. To be clear, he has a pre-existing medical history of high blood pressure and gout. First found out when he was admitted to the hospital in 2015 when he fell ill, and we basically had to force him to go to the hospital BC he didn't want to go. He was put on medication since, with changes to them maybe a year or so ago. So back to when after he ate. My half-sister heard a thud around 740-ish and told me to check BC. She thought maybe my parents are arguing. I go down and see my dad on the kitchen floor, my mom behind him a few feet away, and I hear him snoring. I ask my mom a question, get worried, run back upstairs and knock on my sister's door. She calls my other sister and also tells me to stop wasting time, call 911. I was scared and frantic. I wish I called 911 or saw him when he came in so I could maybe have called sooner. They get frantic too and we all start yelling at each other, and I try to maintain order also as I'm talking to 911 person. At some point in all of this my brother-in-law yells for help and I help him turn my dad onto his side. BC, he said he could choke on his saliva. My dad stops snoring and we start panicking. The EMS tells us how to perform CPR, but my sisters keep yelling, and so I try to get them working together. They finally start working on it. One is doing compression and the other giving him air and sometimes rotating. Fire department and ambulance gets here and they start doing the same thing but also have defibrillators, and honestly, I'm just in shock still. It was maybe 8:03 p.m. when they came or so, I don't remember, it's all a blur. I checked my phone for timestamp, but I called twice so I forgot when original call was placed. They called it at 8:50 p.m. and I just began to lose it. My aunt comes and my sister is trying to call my dad's work to let his bosses know. We talk about how we want my dad's arrangements and agree on cremation. BC, we don't have the money for anything else, but also my sister wants the remains. My mom is bipolar schizophrenic and my sisters and bro-in-law don't get along. Her because of a whole history that would keep you here forever if I tried to type it. My dad was a bad person, but he still chose us and tried his best to provide regardless of his fallacies. He had my mom's back too, saying he wouldn't kick her out or place her in a mental home. My sisters kinda want that, I think, but I'm scared to talk about it. My mom is okay sometimes, but also acts up BC of her mental illness sometimes, and my dad and I were her constants regardless of what happened. My mom is old and still wants to benefit from some social security services that my dad had, but my sisters and I think we should get a majority control of his account. There's a lot of renovations to be done. BC, he ignored upkeep of the house for a number of years, example, the roof. My mom is not very sad about the ordeal. BC, she had a long history of mental abuse from my dad and I understand, but we for some reason stayed together. It how to move forward except for one moment at a time, and I'm still waiting for funeral home to come pick up his body. It's 8:13 a.m. now, been waiting since night before. And I have been crying, but also I can't sleep, and I'm sorry if this doesn't meet guidelines. I just need to vent. Even though I told a few friends, I'm still in disbelief. How this will moving forward. I believe it can though. But it's hard to stay positive.